General Biology. Your teachers, Miss Josephine Guerrero, Mr. Nestor Jr. Malilin, and Miss Jeremy Segario. But for this week, I am Mr. Nestor Jr. Malilin, your lecturer. Welcome to the weekly discussion for General Biology. Today is our week number 3. For this week, we will discuss about the cell structure and its functions. All of the processes that occur within an organism are supported by the cell. The cell contains different parts called organelles. The different structures that you can see in this illustration is an organelle. And an organelle carry out different functions. Each of them has a specific role. Some of these organelles are featured in our discussion. Let's start with the first structure, which is the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a light green structure located outside the cell. The cell is bound by cell membrane. The cell membrane is composed of a phospholipid bilayer or a double lipid layer with proteins and carbohydrates embedded on it. It is semi-permeable, which means that not everything can enter or pass through it. The cell membrane can easily be observed when you look at an animal cell using a compound microscope. The cell membrane plays several important roles for the continued existence of the cell. Its semi-permeability allows the cell to choose the substances to absorb, secrete, or excrete. Substances that are absorbed and excreted by the cell must pass through the cell membrane. The cell membrane is made out of various parts. First is the phospholipid. Phospholipids are polar in nature. It is made out of an hydrophilic head and a hydrophobic tail. Hydro means water, philic means love, so the head is love of water. Hydro means water, phobic means fear, so the tail is fear in water. So between the two, hydrophilic head has a direct contact with the external environment compared to the hydrophobic tail. Also, the proteins in the phospholipid bilayer, which are called membrane proteins, example are channel protein and carrier protein, can participate in the transport of molecules. These membrane proteins allow the entry or exit of molecules that do not easily cross the phospholipid bilayer. So molecules that cannot pass through the cell membrane can pass through the membrane proteins. On the left side, we have the carrier protein. The carrier protein is responsible in accepting molecules that cannot pass through the channel protein. The channel protein allows molecules to move in one direction. So if there are molecules that cannot pass through the channel protein, they will enter to the carrier protein based on their size. And that is how channel and carrier protein work. These membrane proteins participate in the transport of certain molecules across the cell. If we relate the structure and function of the cell membrane to the Harry Potter world, it could be related to the protective enchantments. Protective enchantments were charms used to protect an area for an extended period of time. The spells shielded specific areas and could have a wide variety of applications. The protective enchantments protected the Hogwarts from muggles to enter on it. Just like the cell membrane, it protects the cell from any foreign or harmful substances that could pass through it. Another thing is that it could be also related to the sorting hat. The sorting hat is a simian hat at Hogwarts that magically determines which of the 4 school houses each new students belong to. These houses are Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Just like the cell membrane, it really sorts out which molecules can pass through it. The second organelle is a cytoplasm. The cytoplasm can be found anywhere around the cell. Cytoplasm is a viscous fluid-containing organelle. When we talk about viscous, it means that it could flow freely. The cytoplasm contains the semi-fluid substance called the cytosol. The cytosol is where the different organelles are suspended. Within the cytosol are different substances, such as electrolytes, a substance that produce electrically conducting solutions, metabolites, produced during metabolism, RNA or the ribonucleic acid, and synthesized protein. The cytosol is also the site of many physiological processes, which includes glycolysis. Glycolysis is the conversion of glucose into another form. The cytoplasm appears to have no form. I'll repeat, the cytoplasm appears to have no form. However, it does have a structure due to the presence of cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton has three major filaments. We have the microfilament, the microtubule, and the intermediate filament. So let's differentiate the difference between microfilament, microtubule, and intermediate filament. First is the microfilament. Microfilament has a diameter of about 7 nanometers and is mainly composed of contractile protein called the actin, while the microtubule has a diameter of about 25 nanometer and is composed of globular protein called the tubulin. The microtubule helps form the shape of the cell, as well as track the movement of the organelles. The intermediate filament is about 10 nanometers in diameter and is the most stable and least soluble constituent of the cytoskeleton. The intermediate filament provides tensile strength in the cell, and tensile strength means the maximum stress that an object can withstand before it breaks. In the context of the wizarding world, cytoplasm can be related to the wizard, since cytoplasm can be found anywhere inside the nucleus or inside the cell. The wizards can also be found anywhere inside the Hogwarts, and that is how the cytoplasm and the wizards are related to. Third is the centriole. Centriole is found inside the nucleus. Cell division, the microtubules eventually arrange themselves in a specific manner to form centrioles. So the centrioles are pairs of microtubular structures. Centrioles also plays a vital role in cell division. These centrioles come in pairs and are right angle with each other. They help in the separation and transfer of the replicated genetic materials in the cell called chromosomes. Note that centrioles are visible only in actively dividing animal cells because they are involved in the development of spindle fibers. The activity of the centrioles affects the nuclear chromosome number. If the centrioles do not produce the needed spindle fibers, the duplicated chromosomes will not be separated during the cellular division, specifically in anaphase, where the chromosomes are being pulled apart by the spindle fibers. As a result, the daughter cells produced by cell division through mitosis may not have the same number of chromosomes as the parent cell. Conversely, the daughter cells produced by cell division through meiosis may not have the half number of the chromosome. And now, bound by the next organelle, we have the nucleus. The nucleus is a violet structure here in this illustration, or a rounded structure, which can be found inside the cell. The nucleus is known to be the command center of the cell or the control center of the cell because it is where most of the genetic processes takes place. The nucleus has several parts. This is an illustration of the nucleus. The nuclear envelope located external of the nucleus, is the boundary of the nucleus composed of an inner membrane and an outer membrane. So this inner and outer membrane are called the nuclear membrane. In between the boundary of the nucleus, which is the inner and outer, we call it the perinuclear space. Inside the nuclear envelope is the nucleoplasm. Within the nucleoplasms are strands of chromatin. Chromatin is a combination of DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid and proteins. Chromatin strands further condense to form chromosomes during cell division. Substances that move in and move out inside the nucleus can pass through the envelope's nuclear pores, the holes here. Okay, so the holes is the entry and exit point of particles entering and exiting the nucleus. The information in the chromatin strands enable the nucleus to control all the activities of the cell. That's why it is termed as the control center of the cell. Take note that if the nucleus is absent, the cell would lose its ability to produce new cells and proteins. For example, we have the red blood cells or the erythrocytes. Erythrocyte, if they have no nucleus, it is destined to die in about 120 days. So mature red blood cells cannot make new ones. The new ones will always come from the RBC precursor cells, which contain nuclei. So that is how vital the nucleus is. Inside the nucleus is a small rounded structure called the nucleolus. The nucleolus is a membrane-free organelle found inside the nucleus. It is usually spherical in shape. It contains fibrils and granules. The fibrils have DNA coding for the ribosomal RNA or the rRNA. The granules contain rRNA molecules, which proteins coming from the cytoplasm. The nucleolus, is important in creating the ribosome. So the nucleolus, one of its main functions is to create ribosome. The absence of the nucleolus will compromise the process of protein production because there is no one that can produce ribosome except for the nucleus. So that is how the nucleolus functions. Presenting to you how is the nucleus related to the Harry Potter world. It is the headmaster towers, or specifically Professor Albus Percival Wulfric Rion Dumbledore. Dumbledore is a headmaster in the Hogwarts, and he can control everything inside the university. Dumbledore is the command center of the whole Hogwarts. Just like the nucleus, it is where the genetic process takes place. That's why nucleus is also the command center of the cell. So both Dumbledore and nucleus functions as the control center. Up next is the ribosome. Ribosome can be found in the endoplasmic reticulum and in the cytoplasm. The ribosome is the site of the protein synthesis in the cell. The ribosome are small dense structures that help in the assembly of proteins. Ribosomes come in different forms. Ribosomes may be found freely in the cytoplasm and in the RER or attached as polyribosome. A polyribosome is a series of ribosomes attached to mRNA. Ribosomes work with the other parts of the cell to synthesize protein or the production of protein. Protein synthesis is necessary for the organism's survival. Have you ever wondered what would happen without proteins in our body? For example, proteins serve as an enzyme, which helps speed up chemical processes in the cell. If enzymes are not produced, the reaction in the body will take a very long time or will not take place at all. Another example is the proteins in the cell membrane. Without protein synthesis, membrane proteins like channel and carrier proteins will not be produced, thus affecting the transport of material across the cell. So imagine without channel protein and carrier protein in the cell membrane, molecules cannot pass through or cannot be transported inside and outside the cell. These are just two resulting scenarios if ribosomes are not present in the cell. And ribosome is really vital in the production of proteins. And now, if we are to relate the ribosome in the Harry Potter world, it could be the house elves. Example is Dobby. A house elf is a magical being which is immensely devoted and loyal to the one designated as their masters. House elves serve wizards and witches and are usually found under the employment of old wizarding families. One of their main roles is to serve their masters. Example is preparing food. Just like the ribosome, it prepares protein ready for different physiological processes. And that is why house elves is very vital in the wizarding world, and also the ribosome is very vital in the different functions related to the cell. For this week, we will have our last structure. We have the cilia and flagella. The main function of these two is to provide motility. Flagella and cilia are appendages responsible for the locomotion of the cell or the movement of the cell. Their locomotive action is due to the specialized arrangement of microtubules. Flagella and cilia allow movement, but how are they different? A flagellum or flagella moves in a whip-like manner, such as that of Euglena, example of a protist. Cilia require power and recovery strokes in the swimming movement. Example is the movement of a paramecium. There are numerous cilia in the respiratory pathway of humans. This cilia filters particles, including dirt and harmful microorganisms, from the air that enter the respiratory passage or the nose. That's why cigarette smoking greatly reduces the filtering capability of the cilia. But in humans, the flagella and the cilia are really important in reproduction. Have you ever wondered why? Because in males, sperm cells have flagella that enable them to swim. A sperm cell uses its flagellum to reach the egg, while in females, the cilia in the fallopian tube helps move the egg or embryo toward the uterus. And that is how vital cilia and flagella in the reproduction. That ends our discussion for week 3 part 1. Again, this is Mr. Nestor Jr. Simulilin, and thank you for listening.